Welcome back, AI curious folk. I'm Michael Parekh, your human AI guide. This is AI Ramblings, episode 69. Over the last few shows, we've talked about how the big and not so big AI companies are all spending hundreds of billions of dollars raising their limits. Pricing is going up because supply chain constraints are rising, memory chips, AI chips, all of these components that go into data centers. So a lot of discussion on the financial side of things. The theme I want to focus on today is that building AI data centers is hard. And all of the big players, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, of course, and Anthropic, along with Elon Musk, who has had a record of just rushing through in almost a speedy Gonzalez form, building data centers, just running through obstacles, but they're all finding that there are headwinds and the headwinds are rising. And I want to talk a little bit about at least three components of these headwinds, driven by some of the events that we've seen just in the recent few days and weeks. So, number one is that there was a new report, half of the planned AI data centers on a global basis are waiting for power. There's a number of other reports along these lines. I will have all these links in the show notes so you can read up on a lot more of the background detail. But you're seeing number of reports that data center delays in terms of the power not being available, and the causes are across the board, whereas the components of the actual turbines that are needed to generate the local behind the meter power that is required for these massive gigawatt data centers. Remember, a gigawatt data center that is using lots and lots of GPUs is at least a $50 billion expense. And increasingly, the executives, and Satya Nadella talked about it a few months ago, they're finding that they're getting a little bit more relief on getting the chips from NVIDIA and others, but oftentimes the components are waiting for the power to get hooked up. One of the interesting shortages has been just the backlog of the turbines that are required to generate the power locally. Apparently, it takes months, if not longer, to create these very precise turbines with these teeth that go around at crazy temperatures and speeds. Again, I'll have links in the show notes about all of this, but it's really extraordinary what the dozens, if not hundreds, of components that are all backlogged because of a power industry that is not used to running at tech speeds. And that is a constant reality, I think, for the rest of the decade. And this is despite the immense success that the industry's had in financing said data centers with hundreds of billions going to trillions of dollars. So there is a little bit of, and this is something we've known, but the extent of this, the anecdotal information around this is really coming to light almost every week. And that's an issue. A related item to this is once you get the power, once you get all of this stuff, start to put it together, just the task of putting hundreds of thousands of GPUs, going to millions of thousands of GPUs working in large data center complexes is not as easy as it seems on paper. First of all, no one's done this at scale. So a lot of this is theoretical, has been theoretical. Number two, the core reason we needed these data centers was 2 or 3 years ago was primarily to train the large language models. Today, increasingly, the opportunity and challenge is to really ramp up the inference, which is what the computers do when people start to using this in the hundreds of millions and billions of queries, chatbot prompts, agents that are asking to do all kinds of things, etc. And so just the task of running these things at scale is a challenge. No less a person than Elon Musk is seeing this at his XAI 500,000 GPU data center in Tennessee. And there are a couple of reports on this, which I'll have in the show notes as well. But this is it's very interesting reading because Elon, as you know, is extraordinarily creative. His team tends to go around and through obstacles. And they're finding that this stuff is not only hard, but there are hidden costs that are built in to doing some of this on a more sustained basis. And there's a lot of challenges on this, a lot of that being discovered by these companies because they're doing very new things in terms of using these GPUs and CPUs and the memory in entirely different ways as the application layer of the AI tech stack changes in terms of the kinds of things people need to do. You need to quickly rewire these things, reconfigure these things at scale. And a lot of that is not as easy as it may seem on the surface. These are not just a question of pressing a few buttons and then you're up and away and doing amazing things around this stuff. So number one, as I talked about, the power is a hindrance. Number two, just the tasks of running these massive multi-hundred thousand GPU data centers is a pushback we're seeing is local community and regulatory headwinds for the data centers. There's increasingly evidence mounting. There were some new reports just this week that AI data centers are facing local opposition on an accelerating basis, both for the construction and then later on the operation of these centers, especially in the context of noise, pollution, and other elements. And obviously, the federal government has been very pro industry, AI data center industry, in terms of making sure that a lot of these regulatory headwinds are removed as much as possible. But increasingly, the state and local regulatory environment is getting tougher. We've known this for a while, for a few months now, but it seems to be accelerating. And that is another major headwind that can keep sites basically either not ready to be ramped up as planned earlier, which obviously affects the financing costs and all the downstream issues on the metrics and growth and usage and availability of AI compute that is needed to meet massive amounts of anticipated new demand, etc. It affects all of this stuff, right? And when you combine all of these three big buckets of issues, the regulatory and community pushback, the difficulty of just ramping up massive amounts of GPUs and CPUs for new applications that are changing, not even by the month, by the week sometimes. And then on top of all of that, getting all the power components, the grid components, the wiring components, not just the components, but also the trained personnel, the wiring people, all of that is in short supply and will likely remain so at least through 2030. So all of these are headwinds. We need to kind of keep that in mind. It's very easy to forget when most of the time we're just reading the Wall Street Journal and reading, oh, it's gone from $400 billion in AI data center financings last year to 700 billion this year to $1 trillion next year. These are not solved problems. And a lot of these problems are not under the control, which is very important, of the companies that are expending so many resources of their balance sheet and their financing mechanisms. So I wanted to highlight that as a big ongoing issue, and we'll have more to kind of go through this as time goes on. The next section I wanted to touch on is basically the gadget AI section of AI Ramblings, which we talk about on a daily basis. And the thing here is it's something that I've written about a fair bit, and I'll have some links in the show notes as well. But it's very clear that the operating systems and software integrations needing across our computers or laptops and smartphones need to change very fast for AI agents. Again, we've known this for a while. I've written big pieces that today's internet is, over the last 25 years, was designed and built for humans. Most websites basically assume that any bot that is knocking on the door is malware, so they don't let it in. So there are lots of issues, and the industry is doing Herculean things, actually. OpenAI, Anthropic, when you look at their Claude Code or Codex software, what they do with MPC and all these protocols to work through, working on your computer, working on your smartphone, working on your behalf across your data and applications on the cloud. It's really Herculean, but it's doing it despite today's operating systems and not driven by it. So there will be efforts to redo operating systems in an aggressive way. And here, the big companies obviously are Apple in one corner. You've got Microsoft with its Windows systems for the desktops and laptops that run 70-80% of the computers out there. And obviously, Satya Nadella, the CEO, is very focused on this. And then you've got Android on the smartphone side. And there will be new players. There were rumblings, and I've talked about this before. OpenAI is thinking about ramping up its own AI smartphone to kind of get around these issues, etc. But all of this is because AI agents in particular, far more than AI chatbots, are going to need a lot more control of your device. Early adopters of this stuff, like myself, I'm already finding that I need a separate computer for my AI agent work and for myself, because oftentimes they're just kind of clashing. It's like two drivers trying to grab the same steering wheel in a car constantly, and it's not a long-term workable solution. Same thing goes for the smartphone side of things as the stuff evolves. Again, there's a lot of detail on this that one needs to understand, and I'll have a couple articles on this in the show notes. But this is a big evolution step that is needed in terms of our gadgets basically accommodating AI. And it's a fundamental kind of a shift that will have both just makeshift solutions for now and then a lot of new and evolving solutions very quickly over the next couple of years that will fundamentally change how we think about this stuff in terms of how you're using our computers, relying on them, and dealing with entirely new processes and habits of how we work to get our personal and work stuff done. Okay, now we're at the question and answer section of the and got a couple of interesting questions from listeners and readers. One is because I've been writing a lot about my experience with AI agents, Claude Cowork and Gemini and ChatGPT and so on. One question I got was, "What's my negative AI agent surprise of the week?" And I would say Claude Cowork, which I really like a lot. I have the top tier of that program, and it's really helpful. I talked about it yesterday, how it saves 2 or 3 hours a day. The one of the biggest frustrations on it continues to be that it is a lot of work every day to make sure that every session the software knows and has loaded all my preferences of all the things I like to do, how I like to do specific projects, etc. It's like having an assistant, human assistant, or an intern, which is a popular analogy, and literally, it's a blank slate every day. And they're getting better, but increasingly they're like, you have to remind that intern every day, I want to do these 6 things and I want to do them exactly the way we've done it for the last few days. Use these tweaks here. You have to prompt all of it. And if you sometimes don't and you assume that it's loaded all of that from its various files that you've instructed to load on before it talks to you, it doesn't always do that, and it's still very raw. And again, remember, these things, the cowork didn't exist a few months ago. So these things are very, very new. So I'm not complaining in terms of the criticism on these companies. They do what they've built is extraordinary, but there's a lot more work to do to make this stuff daily reliable for regular users. It's not quite there. It's getting there, but it's going to take time. So that's my continued negative surprise. And as that changes, I will come back and report to you. So the related question I had as my second question was, what's my positive AI agent surprise of the week? And here, because I had a couple of friends and relatives ask me, "Hey, I don't want to spend $200 a month on these things. What can I do on these things? Can you give me a sense?" So I actually took a couple of computers that I had and didn't log on to my regular top tier accounts. And I used the free tiers of all of these AI agents. And I found particularly Google Gemini and ChatGPT and Perplexity in particular to be relatively useful for a lot of basic things that people might want to do at the free tiers. And I just wanted to test that again against some of the things I do with the higher tier services. And even Claude Co-work does a little bit of that, but there you do need at least a $20 subscription to get access to Cowork. And even that is a little iffy because Anthropic has been testing potentially taking out Cowork out of the $20 tier. So that may be the only one that you may not get access to on the freer tiers. But the other services are relatively usable, and I just wanted to report back this week on that I did try it, and it's relatively useful. So good news there. So anyway, that wraps up our AI Ramblings 69 for Tuesday. I also wanted to give you a heads up. I have our AI Reset to Zero today is episode 1077. I talk a lot about Jan LeCun, who's a AI godfather, as it were. He's doing a big AI startup He used to be the head of AI at Meta. He had a very interesting presentation, which I highlighted in today's post, where he literally talks about how we really need to think about AI in common sense terms. And I think there's a lot of merit to what he talks about. So I kind of highlighted that with my takes on that, which you may find of interest, because there's a lot of AI fears on one hand, and just aspirational AI is going to do all the amazing things around the planet for all of us. And the answer is always somewhere in the middle. His is a common sense approach, which I do like, and he systematically lays out practical insights into how we should be thinking about it. So I highlight that for your reading pleasure. Again, thank you for joining. Feedback, questions, always welcome. And otherwise, stay tuned. See you tomorrow.